to move on to Mary Vanderhoof. Mary is married, mother of 3 children, 1 grandchild and another one on the way. Her day job is she's currently a medical writer for Johnson & Johnson. She has had extended involvement with the Center for Social Faith Justice in Trenton, which she'll speak about, so I'm not going to say anything about what that is. And she also has really reached out to our dear neighbors, both near and far. And again, I'll let her speak to that. So I'm just going to turn it over to Mary.
So thank you for inviting me to be here this morning. I said I was very intimidated when I first saw this panel, and speaking to all these women and men who have dedicated their lives to be servants of God. It's just so inspiring to me to look out at all of you and know all the work all of you do. So I want to tell you I am honored to be here today. I'm just going to tell you some of my stories, and I think this has been a great forum for just storytelling, right, and sharing our own experiences, and that's what I want to do. So I'm going to start out with what I like to think of as my mountaintop experience. You know, what was it, second week of Lent, we heard the Transfiguration story. So my experience of going to the top of the mountain was in 2007. I was involved at that time in the Social Justice Committee at my parish, which is over in Hamilton, New Jersey, Our Lady of Sorrow, St. Anthony. I was chair of the Social Justice Committee, and I had a burning desire to do something over in Africa with water. So we started raising money to drill bore wells and build water tanks. And so I was invited by the then diocesan director for Catholic Relief Services to go with her on an educational mission trip to our sister diocese of Kasana Luwero in Uganda. And so it was really a dream come true. When I was a little girl, I used to dream about being a missionary sister. And then I met my husband, and then 3 kids later, that never happened. But here I was now, 2007, being invited to go to Uganda. And so it was just really a dream come true. So I went, and of course, I went with all my preconceived notions of what it was going to be like, and what I was going to bring, and what I was going to be able to do for the people that I was going to meet there. And of course, I was changed completely by the experience, because when I got there, some of the things were like I had imagined. Certainly the poverty I saw was, you really can't imagine it until you're there and you've experienced it, but it was certainly not a shock to me. I knew I was going to see that. But just to see the actual human suffering up close, it was life-changing. One of the women who always sticks in my mind was this mother who came to us. I was staying at a convent of African sisters who ran a health clinic there, and this mother brought her deaf son, who was about 18 years old. And she was very concerned that she couldn't afford to send him to school for the deaf, and without an education, she was really worried that if anything happened to her, you know, he would be left with nothing. And so she was asking us, when you go back to America, can you find a sponsor who will send my son to school, who will pay his tuition? And so we told her we would do everything we could to do that. What we didn't realize is 3 days later, someone came to the convent and told us she had been hit by a car out on the road, right down the road from the convent. And so he was left an orphan. And so, you know, luckily we were able to get him a sponsor, and you know, he was taken care of. But it was the first time I realized how fragile life really is there. We went out into the bush, and we were taken to do home visits for AIDS patients. And the one woman who always sticks with me is this mother who was pregnant with her 7th child, and she was dying of AIDS. And the other 6 children were there at the home with her. The oldest was a 12-year-old boy, and the father had abandoned them, so they were. This boy was now acting as the father, and he knew his mother was dying, and he knew he was now going to have to be the head of this household. And I mean, the desperation was just, you'll never forget something like that. I've never forgotten it. So it was transforming. One of the other things that came as a shock to me there was because I was there with Catholic Relief Services, so we were visiting with a lot of priests, and we were visiting, we were staying with the sisters, but the corruption among the clergy was rampant, and I was so taken back by that. It was just sort of a side of it I hadn't expected to be exposed to or see, but it was shocking, and yet I was so moved by, despite that, the work that was being done by so many good people, good priests and good sisters who were just trying to work within that corrupt system to still do the good work that needed to be done and help the people. But the thing that I think took me most by surprise was just the spirit of the people I met there. The faith, the joy. Every village I went to, we were greeted by troops of dancers and people that were singing and drumming, and it was just an amazing spirit of life, and they were so anxious to share the culture, to share their stories with me, and it was just an amazing experience of me receiving from the people much more than I felt I had come to give, because their faith, in spite of all the poverty, all the hardships, the fragility of life, their faith was tremendous. And I think the thing I came home from that trip with more than anything was this sense that maybe living in the first world with all our stuff, with all our busyness, is really an obstacle to faith, and that this simple life that they were leading, and they had no illusions about their dependence on God. They knew they were totally dependent on God, and that's what I got from them, was realizing that all that stuff is getting in the way of me really surrendering to my dependence on God. So it was a really life-changing experience for me, and I came home with all those stories, and I've held on to them now for all these years, and I've tried to share them. I went around doing speaking gigs all over the Diocese of Trenton to raise money for Catholic Relief Services, because I felt an obligation. The one thing the women especially always said to me as I would leave a village is, please don't forget us. Please remember us. And so I've tried to be faithful to that all these years, to remember their stories and to share their stories whenever I have the opportunity to do so. So when I came back from that trip, and I was involved, and I still am involved with an organization that helps Uganda, I realized that those types of immersion experiences are very important, to live with, to walk with people who are from a different culture or living a different life, who are poor. And so I got involved with an organization that was in its founding stages called the Center for Faith Justice, and I'm still very involved with it. And we run immersion trips for middle school and high school students to go to areas of poverty, and they think they're just going on a nice summer week where they're going to paint, or they're going to stock the food pantry at some food bank or something. And of course they do all those things. They do good work. But most of the kids who come on our trips are very affluent, white suburban teenagers who have never experienced anything other than their nice white suburban life. And we take them into Trenton, we take them to Philadelphia, and we take them to Appalachia, we take them to West Virginia and Kentucky. And they experience real poverty for the first time in their lives. And that is, for many of them, life-changing. But what we emphasize on these trips, and I think what makes us a little different than a lot of other mission trips that you can go on, is that we emphasize to the kids, you need to get to know these people. We want you to hear their stories. And so we put them in situations where they're working side by side with people in the area we're working in. And we encourage them. We give them lots of time. We don't really care whether the painting gets done. What we care about is that they sit and they listen and they hear the stories of the people they're working with. And then at night, we gather them to reflect. What were the gifts you got today from the people you worked with? What were the stories you heard? What did you learn? And so our mission is to try to help each of those kids have that mountaintop experience that I had in Uganda. So one of the experiences I had with that organization was, I have a brother. I'm one of 6 kids. I'm the oldest, so I'm the bossy sister. And I have a brother, and I have been for probably my whole life a real bleeding heart liberal Democrat. And my brother is a dyed-in-the-wool Republican. I don't know where he came from. Our Irish-American family with 2 union shop stewards for parents, but so it is. So my brother and I are always arguing politics. We're always going at it. And so I was talking to him at some family gathering, and I was telling him about the Center for Faith Justice and what I do on these trips. And I said, would you ever think about having your son Brian do one of these trips? And he said, yeah, it might be a good experience for him. And I said, well, what about you? We always need adult volunteers. Would you think about doing this? Well, to my surprise, he said yes. So he went down to Appalachia. He went to West Virginia, and he spent a week. And he was assigned to paint this school at the hallways in the elementary school. And he got talking to the principal down there. And the principal was someone who was born and raised in this little town, Dunlow, West Virginia, and he really was touched by her story, that she had the opportunity to get out, and she had gone to college, and she could have went off and had a great career somewhere else, but she came back, and she was dedicating her lives to trying to help these children in this tiny little town where the coal mines had closed up a long time ago, and 90% of the town was unemployed. And so he started asking her, like, what does the school really need? And it turned out they didn't have a library. They had absolutely no place for children to go sit. They had no books for kids to take out to read. And he came home and said to me, Mary, we have to build a library. I said, we? He said, yes, we, you and me, we're going to do this. And so my brother and I got together, and we got pulled together our network of friends, family, coworkers, everybody, and we did a big fundraiser, and we were able to raise $50,000 to build a library, which my brother really spearheaded it. It was really him, but the thing that amazed me about it was that here we were, who we were always at complete polar opposites of the spectrum when it came to how to help the poor. And he was really transformed by his experience, and we were able, and to this day, my brother and I still, he's going down there for the 6th year in a row this year, wow. And we've continued to stay engaged with this community. And so he was transformed, his son was transformed, and so and now he's been sharing the story of the people of Dunlow with all his network, and the stories just keep spreading out from that, and that good work keeps being spread. My last story I wanted to share with you is about a priest friend of mine who he was an Indian priest who was assigned to my parish 7 years ago, and he was a Dalit. He was a member of the untouchable caste, and so he had a very, very poor life growing up in India. It was somewhat miraculous that he even got into the seminary, and there's a whole long story about how his mother sort of pulled some strings and tricked some people into taking him because normally Dalits wouldn't be accepted, but and he ended up being sent to America, and he just loved the United States because it was the first time in his life, he said, that he had ever been treated as an equal. Even in India, even by the clergy, he was treated as a Dalit. That caste system, they say that it doesn't exist, but it's there. It's in the culture, and even within the clergy, it's there. So it was just life-changing for him to come to the United States and finally be treated this way. Well, he ended up being called back to India by his diocese, and he was very reluctant to go back, but he accepted that this was, must be part of God's plan for his life, and so he went back. And so I've stayed in very close touch with him. I haven't actually gone back to India yet to visit him, although I'm sure that's going to happen eventually because I talk to him every other week, and he asked to be assigned to the poorest village that they could give him in the diocese. And so he went into this very rural village, and it's a pretty even mix in the village of Christians and Muslims and Hindus. And so he has been trying to find ways to bring the people together. And one of the ways that he did that was he started a tailoring school at the church. And so he asked if we could help him raise money for sewing machines. And so I got people in our parish who all loved him and missed him to get together, and we raised the money for sewing machines. And so he's been able to bring together the women in that village, Hindu, Muslim, and Christians, side by side. And he said it was not easy at first, especially some of their husbands were not too thrilled about them going to the Catholic Church to do this. But they realized that, well, this was an opportunity for them to have some income if they could learn how to sew and started their own, tailoring business. So he was able to convince them, and so he's been able to bring these women together, and just done wonderful things. At the end of their course, they take a 10-week sewing course, and then they get the sewing machine as a gift at the end. And so we've been able now to do 2 classes of this where we're able to raise the money to. He's built a community center as well, where they now, because at first they were just doing the tailoring right in the church. They would just they don't have pews, so they would just do it. But now they have a community center where they're doing this. So he's been able to do wonderful, wonderful work, and he's been an inspiration to me of someone who's been, creating unity in a village that was very divided along religious lines. And again, it's through stories. When I get on the phone with him every 2 weeks, I just listen. I just let him talk, and I tell him what's going on in the village, and he just tells me the story after story of each of these people whose lives he's involved with. And so it just struck me as I was reflecting on what to talk about today that, it's really all about opening yourself up to go into these situations and just be open to listening. You have to first step out of your comfort zone, I guess. And I guess I did that when I got on that plane to Uganda. You have to step out of your comfort zone. And then when you get there, though, you have to just be open to, okay, maybe it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. But let me just be filled up with what it is, and listen and experience the story, and then hold that in your heart and then share it. Because when you share those stories, I think you're continuing that transformation. I mean, by me sharing the story, every time I tell it, I am somewhat moved. It takes on a new color, and by retelling it, it renews in me that determination, that inspiration to keep up this good work, right? But it just also spreads it. It has a ripple effect, and it's been amazing to me to see that each of these experiences I've had have not just been left with me, that I've been able to share those stories and spread that among more and more and more people who hear the stories, and then or maybe say, well, maybe I could step out of my comfort zone, maybe I can do something. So that's the experience I've had, and so that's what I want to say. Just be open to listening, take these stories into your heart, and allow them to transform you. So thank you.
Do any of you have a question for Mary, or a thread or a comment or something you heard that sort of fits with your understanding of unity in the tradition of the Sisters of St. Joseph? Yes, Rita.
Well, I just thought about that whole mission to connect neighbor with neighbor. That it's not just me and God, but it's others and others, and that just jumped out at me.
Right. It's the nurturing neighbor with neighbor as much as ourselves with neighbor. Yeah. Yes, Julie.
What was your when you said about your desire to go to Uganda, and you said you wanted to do something in Africa and something with water? Mm-hmm. Why? What led you there? Like, how did you arrive at that place?
I think it had been just I had heard a lot about things that were being done in Africa, and water just seemed such a basic necessity, and and it's a beautiful symbol as well. Yeah. But it just seemed like something so simple. Not a lot of money was needed to be raised to be able to drill a well. Sure. And yet the number of lives that we could affect, and that the drilling a well was not going to just provide water. It was going to free up children. Sure. Who spend their whole day going back and forth miles carrying water jerry cans on their head of water, so they don't get to go to school. So, you know, after having researched it, I realized this is something where you get so much bang for your buck, because for a small amount of money, if you can put that well into that village, you're not only providing clean water and solving a lot of the disease and sanitation issues, but you're now allowing children to go to school as well. I saw a movie called Millions. I don't know if anyone's ever familiar with that movie, but I loved that movie. And I think that was that image of, at the end of the movie where the kid in his dream, he sees the well in Africa, that always stuck with me too. So it was just sort of inspiration to me.
The hardest part for me this whole morning has been like moving this along, because I feel that there's so much to say, each and every one. I mean, I was struck with that sense of mutuality, you know, which is so much, I think, a part of how we say we approach this mission of unity, that it's not just about our going to help someone, but being open enough to be helped ourselves, to be changed ourselves. I've heard that story all along, and that came out in yours again. And once that happens for us, it begins to spread. So it's that when we light that one little light, that one little candle, it can trigger others. And so the light grows brighter. And the other little piece that'll be where I'll have to end on this too is, well, two things. One was you talked about how some people in Africa, the clergy, there's corruption, you know, but yet there are these people, these priests and sisters who are doing good despite the corruption. We've got those choices around us all the time. It might not be corruption, but again, are we going to be part of the darkness, or are we going to be part of the light? Are we going to be part of building things up, unity, or part of tearing it down? The choice is always ours. Again, we don't have to be overcome by it. And the last thing was that sense of relationship. You said, you know, you help with the young people. It doesn't matter if the painting gets done. We say it's all about relationship. And the mission is accomplished primarily through the way we are with each other in relationship. And I think that was a good example. As we go about doing the works, the real focus is on the relationship that's going on. Thank you, Mary. Thank you.